right, hello everyone. So I am filling in for Brandon Lovejoy today to be the moderator of this number 3 Fireside chat with Dan Larimer, and we also have the final delegated board members for the most recent trial mock election for the EdenOnEOS process. So we've got myself, Chris Barnes, Joshua Seymour, Ami Haines, and Felix Ruiz. And we were the lucky ones to make it to the top with our respective pitches. And Ami was the lucky sortition winner of the 2000 EOS prize. So he has the heaviest weight on his shoulders to deliver on that promise. First, thanks, Dan, for your time. I really appreciate you being here with us.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for your participation in Eden and help improve out the governance process and demonstrate all the various features of Eden as far as how it prevented incumbent advantage. Chris won last time, and if we didn't have sortition at the end, I think you guys did a polling to see who would have won. If we had done it the same way as the first mock election, Chris would have won again. But because of sortition, we've got a little bit of variation in the leadership, and more ideas are represented, and so that's a positive outcome from my perspective. One of the things that I wanted to make sure that I designed Eden to do is to make sure that even I couldn't win every single time. So I didn't participate in the election because I was funding the prize for this mock election, and I didn't want to have any appearances of just paying myself. That would not be productive. So what I'd like to do today is get some feedback of, how did the discussions go? And Chris, you claimed that these people were lucky, but I don't think luck had anything to do with it.
You might be right. The first round, there is certainly the randomization does add the element of luck, right? But once that happens, it's down to skill to move yourself forward.
Yep. Yeah, that's like saying the winners of a chess tournament. It's all based on luck. Yeah. Did you happen to get paired with the winning champion in your first go or not? But it seems like there's definitely very capable, intelligent people that got selected from a total of 64 people participated in this mock election on a voluntary basis for, I guess, a 2000 EOS budget it's awarded to, is it Ami? Sorry, I don't know how you pronounce your name.
Yeah, it's Ami. Yeah.
Ami, yeah. So, I'm curious, what do you intend to use the funds for?
I proposed a system of leveraging WebAuthn and making it easy to onboard people that have some level of trust on another account owner on the mainnet. So if I, for example, have an EOS account and I want to, I told my wife, my parents, my kids how great it is and how they should have an account and start saving for their future. And they all said they don't want to bother with keeping the backup of the private keys and losing that. And they heard horror stories either from me or from the media about people losing large sums of money. And I said, we need to make it easy for people to use technology, and WebAuthn allows you to use your fingerprint and you never see your private key and you don't manage it. It's actually in the hardware separate subsystem on your phone, and it generates a key pair and it sends the public key to the website. But it's not, the system is not built that way because there are limitations. WebAuthn works for a specific website. And I said, you know what, I'm going to develop this open source, free for all package of a mini website where anyone who has a minimum technical ability, like many people have the ability to install WordPress and have their own blog on their own domain. So it's going to be similar in the difficulty level. And these domains are going to be for a very small group of people. It's nothing commercial. It's if I put it on my website, it's for my direct people that know me and trust me, and I'm going to be the owner permission on their accounts. So if their phone breaks or gets stolen, I can help them regain access to their account using a new phone. And people like the idea. I think it's somewhere in between trusting the big corporations, which was the norm before 2008, and going all the way to the other extreme of trust no one. It's each one for their own, and it's too much of a burden on people that are not technical and really invest the time to learn all the different aspects and risks. So we have to find the middle ground, and it's going to be open source, and everybody's going to be able to check it. And I said I'm going to use half of the funds to pay myself to develop that, and the other half is going to be split 3 ways for additional Eden members that are capable to do security checks and verify that the code is okay.
All right. So adding WebAuthn, which is a web standard to help secure accounts, combined with open source web portal that facilitates using WebAuthn through your browser is a very exciting project. And one of the things that has resulted of this is enabling a hard fork. I introduced WebAuthn as a means of signing transactions for EOS.io, and the EOS network has been running a version of EOS.io that supports this, but the hard fork has not been activated. I heard reports today that a lot of the block producers have moved and started signing a proposal to enable that hard fork. I'm not sure if it's been activated at this time.
Yes, it was super fast. I mean, it was just several hours, and we had 15 people 15 block producers that signed.
Yeah. So the block producers have enabled a new hard fork on EOS as a result of a proposal presented on a mock election. This is not even an official Eden election.
Yeah.
Right. So that shows you the power of having tools to reach consensus on subjective matters. So I'm very thrilled to see that the WebAuthn code that we developed at Block One while I was there has been enabled on the EOS mainnet as a side effect of this Eden election. That's a huge success in my book.
I agree. So if I may just tell you a little bit about my experience, the first round was with 3 people that said in advance, I'm not going to propose anything. And I was disappointed because I told them this is going to be a very short call, and there's not going to be any back and forth struggle to reach a consensus, because it's a default decision. If you vote for me, or you just don't vote for anyone, and you want to kill this proposition. So they voted for me, and we still had a long and interesting conversation. And after that, we actually passed the time limit, and Dominic had to pull us in. I thought we had 5 more minutes, and then on the next round.
What kind of things did you talk about during all that time? Like, what was the interest of your group?
No one wanted to. They just wanted to vote. The 3 people that were with me, they didn't have anything to offer, and I was disappointed with that.
But you had lots to talk about. It seemed like you were going over the time limit. What is it that they wanted to see happen with the Eden process?
We asked each other about their backgrounds, and at the end, they just drilled me on my pitch and helped me refine it and improve it for the next round.
Sounds good. So what happened in the next round?
So the next round was the complete opposite, because everybody had an idea and everybody wanted to go forward and get the largest budget. So it was a very different dynamics, and I really liked it. I think we all enjoyed it, and I was listening attentively to the people. I actually watched some of the videos of the first trial election, and I saw Chris Barnes winning in the different levels. I followed his path in the first round, and I think I learned from him, because when it was my time to talk, I asked people about their project and tried to probe and see if it aligns with Eden's values or EOS incentives. And I didn't judge. I just wanted to learn, and something happened. You could actually sense a moment there in the meeting where I was asking one guy about his project, and another guy interrupted and said, "I'm voting for Ami," and that caused an avalanche, and that was the end of it. And something similar happened to me in the first trial election, where it was me and another guy who really insisted he wanted to be elected, and he said he's going to be a good representative and he's going to work full time, and we were insisting, and there are two other guys that I think were more lenient and listening, and they didn't push their agenda so hard. And then one of them, at a very late stage of the 50-minute time limit, said, I'm voting for Ami. And then the other guy also said the same, and I don't remember I think we didn't get to a unanimous vote. We had 3 out of 4 voting for me. So yeah, and this trial election, when we reached the board level, it was interesting because Chris said, if you vote for me, I will give you the funds because I don't need it. I have nothing to do with that now. And I jumped and I said, are you bribing us? And he said, oh, no, it's not a bribe. And then I said, okay, are you going to split that evenly? I really wanted to press on that point. So it was interesting. And we knew that it was a sortition, so it was friendly anyway.
Yeah, it was neat too, because we didn't break off into a separate room to do that discussion at the final delegate level. We left it so everyone in the call just turned off their their cameras, and they just listened in live as we were talking, which I think was a little more fun for them too. And it was possible because of the sortition, so it didn't really matter how we discussed and what we came up with in terms of how the funding was allocated. So that was probably nice for the fans.
So that sounds good.
So that's my story. Other than the days after the election, I had a storm of discussions and messages directed at me, which I'm not used to, on Telegram, on so many different channels, and opening new groups and inviting people to help me think of the idea. And it was interesting and it was stressful, because some people said, oh, it's not going to work. You don't know, this group was working on a similar idea and the other group was working on something, and what you're doing is not safe, and you're going to have private keys on web servers, and it's a big no-no. And I had to dissect and talk to each person on their points, and some people had a long list, and I really wanted to find out if there is a big roadblock I didn't consider, but I didn't find any yet. And now I'm going to just be more busy coding and less busy talking.
One of the things I've learned in the crypto space is you have the security perfectionists out there, and they'll come and identify all the theoretical holes, not realizing that ease of use is a vector of security, that if you don't have ease of use, you actually have no security. And sometimes it's worthwhile making trade-offs between the ease of use and the absolute theoretically impenetrable security. So I really like the concept of WebAuthn. It integrates with the browser and gives you hardware keys. One of the downsides to WebAuthn is it is a hardware key. You lose that device, you kind of have a problem. But you're combining it with account recovery, and so you have this trusted or somewhat trusted third party, right? It's small scale, fractal in nature, so you don't have a big centralized point of failure, and I think that's really cool. One of the things that I'm excited about the potential for Eden in general is that we can have built-in account recovery by leveraging the network of Eden invites and endorsements and things like that. So you can say, I'm going to trust the Eden community to arbitrate restoring access to my account if I lose it, because you've got video and all this other verifiable relational data to know that this actually is your account. So even if you lose your keys or someone steals your keys, we have the governance structure, the ability to reach consensus that this is actually your account, not an account controlled by keys. Keys are just evidence of ownership. Actual ownership is agreement among a group of people that you own something. And Eden provides tools for a group of people to reach that consensus. And EOS.io and WebAuthn and these other things provide tools to automate the consensus process for the vast majority of cases without having that fragile result of whoever can steal your keys owns your money situation. So I'm really excited about how Eden and governance and using the tools and software of EOS.io and Eden to allow a group of community to reach consensus on property rights and to resolve disputes. And that will actually be more powerful in the long run than Bitcoin, where one mistake and you lose $1 billion because someone stole your keys.
Yeah. Also, I like the way that EOS.io enables this key recovery without relying on email or phone or SMS, text messages. It's all on the blockchain, and you can use time delay and you can use a threshold of several people, so you have redundancy. It doesn't have to be just the person that built this or installed this website, and then you still have one point of failure. You can have several people that are the owner of the keys for the people that create account using WebAuthn on that website.
Excellent. Well, I'd like to hear what some of the other proposals were, like perhaps if the sortition had gone a different way, what universe would we be living in? Joshua, would you like to tell us what you were proposing?
Sure. Yeah, so in the first room, it was just two people that weren't running as candidates and two people that were running as candidates, and so I was one of those, and Max was one of the other ones. And the initiatives the three main initiatives that I ran on, one of them was the Eden proxy, and I had pitch decks ready for all of these. The other one was a EOS support. And I'm not necessarily leading out on any of these projects per se, but I'm involved in them. So Chris is leading out on the proxy, Randall Rowland is leading out on EOS support, and other people have stepped up in there as well. And that project's also being self-funded at the moment. The third one that I ran on was a little bit controversial because I had prepared a pitch deck for it, but the pitch deck kind of took Aaron at GrayMass by surprise. It was based on a conversation that we had, and I just naturally had integrated a lot of the GrayMass branding into it, so it almost looked like it was coming from GrayMass. And so even though I talked about that in that first room, I made sure to kind of preface, like, GrayMass is willing to advise and develop parts of this. With the money from this election, we could only do we could only get started on a small piece of it, and it's basically a user management system. And GrayMass thought it would be the next logical step for the larger project would be to begin a profile system. And my main interest for sparking the conversation with them was to develop some kind of a single sign-on solution, so that somebody could easily integrate signing in with your EOS account on like a WordPress website or some other thing. And I would like that feature, but also I know a lot of other people would start to adopt and use EOS accounts if it was easy to have that kind of ability. But you can also do a lot more with an entire user management system. And so the other thing that I did throughout the entire election was I sort of pitched myself as a candidate, and that in the first election, I was relatively unknown, I would say. And so since then, I really worked in kind of an immersive discovery mode to really understand what's happening in the EOS ecosystem and even within Eden, and what the power approaches are to solving the various situations and bridging the gaps that are happening. And so I've got my hands in many different focus groups and have really networked as much as I can like a madman to understand what people want and what's going on and all of that. And so I did kind of mention, I believe, in that first round that that I was involved in initiatives behind the scenes, and that I would, regardless of the outcome of the election, I would continue to move these things forward and support them in any way that I can. And the other element was that I probably have more time to commit to being a representative than anybody else in the room. And so I think some of those things, particularly wanting to donate the larger chunk to Gray Mass because that's a project that needed the larger chunk, I think that was what gave me the votes to move on. And it was, so myself and two other people voted for me to move on. The competitors stayed strong with their thing. If I wasn't being aggressive in the election this time, I would have voted for Max to move on to the next round, no problem. But I did pledge to Max that I would understand the two projects he was pitching and see what I could do to help be ready to represent those in upcoming larger elections. And so from there, I moved on to the next round where everybody was a candidate, and similar kind of pitch, basically. And I would have voted for any of the other three people if I wasn't, really wanting to advance this time. And I did a similar pledge to each of them. And so I'm working to fulfill that pledge to be able to intimately understand what they're doing and where they're at with it right now, and how that gap can be bridged, so that if I end up in a capacity to help those projects behind the scenes or with funding from upcoming elections, that I'm in a good position to do that with my knowledge about the projects. And so that room unanimously voted me to the final round. And the final round was pretty cool. I don't know if I have any particular comments about it, but I thought it was interesting how you wanted us to select somebody and then also still do the sortition. I thought that was kind of a fun way to do it, and very interesting kind of end to the experiment.
All right. Well, thank you so much for participating and give us some insight there. We'll go to Felix next. Felix, what was your experience with the small collection?
Well, I felt it was, I had a little bit of luck on my side on this one, because I feel like each room, they were more broader pitches. So the first round, it was really just two of us that was pushing a proposal to move to go to the second round. So one of the guys, I didn't catch his name because he had his telegram name, and so I think there was a little confusion like going into these rounds. Like, so we were told to put our Telegram name so it'd be easier to find each other on Telegram, but then the problem is if no one didn't introduce their name, or like me, sometimes I feel like when people introduce their name, sometimes you don't catch it right away. It's hard to identify who they were. So I didn't have his name, but he was proposing like a bigger idea that would require more funding than the smaller funding that was being up for grabs here in this election. So his idea was for like a block explorer that was focused on trust, like using Ricardian contracts and the discussion really kind of centered around more my idea. They got a lot of questions. They had a lot more questions. So I actually prepared like a pitch video, so that it was just, my ideas were clear and it was just a little bit more polished. And so my idea was to use the funding to fund content creators to help kind of spread the word on EOS. And the way I've been kind of talking about it has been like a EOS faucet, where we're getting EOS into the hands of the general public, people that might not have even heard of cryptocurrencies. So I did a video where I traveled from Colorado to Texas, and I only paid in cryptocurrency and or in EOS. And so I had to convince people to pay for my gas, and in return I'd send them the equivalent to EOS, the equivalent in EOS. And so I'd get them set up on an account, and then I'd send them the EOS. And so my idea was like, why not take that idea, but like treat it as a sponsorship for creators on this platform that I'm a part of called Creator Now. So Creator Now is this program that has it was created by this content creator who went from 0 to 1 million subscribers in 1 year. His name's Iraq. And so it's for all aspiring content creators. And so, yeah, that was kind of my pitch, and everyone was kind of interested, asking more ideas. And so the discussion centered around that. And we actually got cut. We got cut short before we could come to consensus. Like, we got pulled out of the Zoom call. And so Pascal, he was in my room, and he put in the Telegram that he was going to vote for me. And so then I think that kind of led everyone to shift towards voting towards me to the next round. But I had no idea if I was going to make it to the next round or not until after the first round had ended. And then going into the second round, we had some heated debate. We had Mira. She had pitched. Her idea wasn't, I don't know, she didn't really have like a clear way of like how she was going to use the funds, other than saying she was going to give 50% to some like Telegram groups. And so one vote was wanting to vote for her, and the reason was because like she was a female, and I like the idea of like encouraging women to participate in this process, but I didn't really like that was the reason they were going to vote. So I had brought up, this is all recorded, and I think reputation matters as far as who you vote for too, and why you're voting, because I think you got to have a good reason to vote. And my pitch, what I kind of fought for was like, I took Chris's strategy from the first Eden election of really trying to get like a small win from what the funding that was available. So, I had a plan of using the EOS I'd get. So at that time, if I had advanced to the second round, that'd give me 110 EOS. And I was thinking, okay, if I divvy that up to 10 EOS each for each content creator, 10 EOS is about $30. And my idea is to create a video series challenge where like the first series of challenge will be, you have to convince somebody to pay for a meal, and you can only use EOS. So what that will do is I will get the content creator set up on an EOS account, and then that'll be the same process that they will use when they get whoever ends up paying for their meal. They'll set them up on an EOS account. So I kind of leaned on that idea, or the fact that I was more prepared. I broke down what I planned on using the funding for. And so luckily I was able to pull through. Another person in the room said he was going to vote for me. He was completely against just giving 50% of the funds to Telegram groups without like a clear reason. And so then we were at a standstill, but then the third person ended up giving up his vote to me to move on. And so, that was kind of my experience. And then going into the third round, we all knew it was just going to be random, but it was cool because I got a lot of support, especially because we held it open to everyone that was in the Zoom call. So in the chat, a lot of people liked the idea of funding my initiative of just kind of helping spread the word on EOS. Because my whole take is there's just a lot of noise in the crypto market, and we have an amazing technology, and we need to be showing it. And by creating content around it is a great way to get EOS out into the hands of the general public, and kind of, hopefully get through some of the noise that there is through all the craziness of a crypto bull market. But
all right, thank you, Felix. I want to say I really like your idea of using the funds to incentivize content production. One of the things that I think Eden has potential to do is to do what Steemit and Voice failed to do, which is have unique identities voting to reach consensus on content to reward with community funds in a democratic manner, and having a dispute resolution governance process to filter out the people who are abusing the system and who are just trying to game an algorithm. So you have real identities, one vote, one person, and reputation on the line. All those things together, I think, could allow Eden and EdenOnEOS to become a social media platform that actually gets a lot of traction for people being able to sign up, join, publish content with their Eden profiles, and then a part of the Eden budget could be delegated to rewards for that system, and each elected representative would be able to contribute part of their budget to that system as a means of funding it. So I really like the concept of getting people involved, of onboarding people, of producing content in these videos that can then be shared and be entertaining. I think that's a great way to promote EOS. And I think with the sortition at the end, each and every one of you here knew that there was a possibility that you could get funding for your idea. And that's huge. But even beyond the funding that you could have gotten, you have the opportunity to come on this call and to share your idea. And now a lot more people are hearing your ideas, and you are having an impact and influence in the community just by being here. And I really like your idea of having the video to have a precise pitch of making sure you could communicate it efficiently during the time slot. So thank you very much for all your effort that you put into to your campaign and the thoughts, and even your trip that you told us about, traveling across the country, getting people onto EOS to pay for your food. That's a fabulous challenge. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad that you like that idea. Yeah, it's cool. I hope when I bring on board these content creators too, is to really, like, through discussion, because setting them up on an EOS account, it'll be on a Zoom call, and I want to capture that for content as well. And I want to make them, wary of, like, knowing, like, I'm trusting you guys. I'm sending you over the EOS, but this is a transparent way. So if you take the money and run, you won't get any more, but it's also your reputation's at stake because it's been captured on video, and I will make content around it. And that's what I really like about this whole Eden process too, is, transparency is the biggest thing that we need. It's why we have all the chaos we have right now in this world, is we just don't know who to trust. Knowing what's the truth or not is hard now because we have no central, like, consensus of like, yes, these people are reputable, we can trust them because everything they've said, we can back it up. But yeah, I think this is awesome. Felix, it's a pleasure to be on something like this with you, because I think of you as a person that you think like, how the founding fathers of our country thought, and yeah, it's people like you that think like this, and take action that make a change in this world. And so, you're a huge reason as to why I still hold on to EOS, because that dedication and consistency, that means a lot. And I think that goes a long way. And, I like that the tortoise and the rabbit race
yes
thing. Yeah. Like, we're gonna, the consistency wins at the end of the day. And yeah, your work is much appreciated. It's an honor to be here. And yeah, this opportunity has been awesome.
Thank you for that acknowledgement of my consistency. The whole time, even before I did BitShares, I've been aiming to solve the governance problem. How can we organize society in a nonviolent, voluntary way? And money and cryptocurrency was one aspect of it. Stable currencies was another. Social media was another. But it all boils down to, how do you reach consensus on the soft, subjective issues, the things that computers can't reach consensus on? And that's a human coordination problem that faces all kinds of challenges, structural challenges with the Pareto distribution of power and voting systems and the like. And so I'm really excited about where Eden is, and my book back there, More Equal Animals, really dives into the rationale for why we have structured things this way. And I have tremendous confidence in the potential of this process as we automate it, as we get the tooling to scale it, that we'll be able to have a robust property rights system that is not fragile in the way that technology is fragile, but it's robust because it's a human consensus process. And it's that robustness combined with the ability to have a community that can elect leaders from its population, so that it's not possible to just cut off the head and scatter the flock, right? The flock has the tools to always regrow a new head, regrow a new leader, and to have confidence in the consensus that this is the new leader that's being chosen, and that it's not somebody who won just because they're super popular, or just because they bought the media, or just because they've got money, or whatever. There's or just because they're aligned with some political party, right? All those things are the problems with human governance that Eden is attempting to solve. And that's been the holy grail of my entire career. And I think Eden is pushing the envelope there, and being able to combine that with EOS and the funding and support of the community is a huge advantage, I think, that EOS has in the long run. And we might be slow and steady, but we're focusing on the right thing. I think all the other cryptocurrency projects out there all have centralized governance processes, and they're eventually going to devolve into the same type of corrupt centralization that we have today, even though they might be on public ledgers. But Eden has the potential to truly maintain that for EOS and to empower the EOS community to go far and beyond any other blockchain out there. So I'm excited about the potential, and each and every one of you here is helping prove that. So thank you for participating. Now our incumbent, how was the mock election 2.0 for the incumbent? Was there any bias against you because you won before, or what happened?
No, I think my reputation was in good standing, and that's actually probably what helped me move forward. The first round was 3 individuals who had Spencer was he had a pretty interesting pitch. He basically was planning on moving forward only because whoever had a pitch, he was just going to try to make their pitch better. So he figured as long as he asked the right questions to push their pitch to make it better so he could be representing it, then it would make their pitch better to move forward, which I thought was an excellent approach. A lot of compliments. He used the reference that he was going to ask people, are you going to put as much work in as Chris did? And so it's really flattering and humbling to know that my efforts haven't gone unnoticed, and it was appreciated. So I was able to move forward there. And also interesting, we had someone who was brand new to EOS. He very minimal experience, but he had heard about Eden, and he participated. So I thought that was really great that at least we are reaching some new people and willing to even put in the effort of showing up. So I thought that was excellent. Second round, more competitive, definitely had some great ideas. Douglas Bunter had a really excellent pitch that was certainly worthy of funding. I think, so there's a lot of good ideas that are there. And I think that's important. A lot of questions about, do we ask for funding when we haven't really presented a full, holistic, really serious set of proposals to request significant funding for Block producers? But it's nice to see that there are some projects there that we just need to refine, aggregate, and then highlight that. But so my proposal was to set up an Eden members approved proxy. And so it's basically just using the subjective opinions of Eden members to be the most heavily weighted metric in the proxy, as opposed to the purely objective metrics. And that was made, the timing was quite serendipitous. EOS Costa Rica, an arguably underappreciated block producer who's done some great work, they built a tool called eosrate.io, which allows EOS members to sign in with their EOS account and then subjectively rate block producers based on 5 metrics, basically. So they can log in, rate BPs, and now I'm going to be able to use, they're going to add a filter, so I can just filter out current Eden members, and I'll be able to filter those subjective scores and use that to most heavily weight how this proxy will then allocate its votes to BPs. And so the goal there is to just work harder and just really try to bring this community together. You know, EOS, as we're all aware, has had some ups and downs, and there's been some fracturing amongst the community and loss of sentiment. And I think Eden, for all the reasons that you've mentioned and we've all mentioned and we're all here for, this is an opportunity to reinvigorate some of this fire that we all once had, and to bring us back together, to encourage a lot of these token holders who have left their tokens on exchanges to explain to them why they should pull them off an exchange and vote and actually use what delegated proof of stake, the power that it has to delegate your stake and actually have a voice. And so if we can aggregate the voice of the people under one proxy, then I think we will be able to potentially have a positive influence as to who the block producers are, and do we have the right block producers? And if block producers aren't doing the things we'd like to see, we can encourage them. It's not meant to be adversarial, but we can certainly start to open a dialogue and start to, you know, maybe help improve what block producers do through a collaborative extended hand approach. So that was the pitch. It was sufficient to get me to the final round, and I didn't need funding. It's 5 EOS to start a proxy. So, you know, the funding wasn't the concern for me. And that was part of my quote unquote bribe that Ami mentioned earlier, was just that I didn't need the funds. So I had asked when I'm really appreciative that you had suggested to Dom that we still should vote for a representative amongst that final group, because it gave us a chance to discuss a lot more. And it gave me a chance to pitch the idea that I could use the title. It would benefit me to have this symbolic title to then take that to leverage as a method, or at least some sort of weight to get in touch with the block producers. You know, they may not want to talk to me. Who am I? So at least if I can say I'm still the current mock trial representative of the Eden process, then that might give me a little more power and ability to break the communication barrier and try to start a conversation and see where it goes. So they agreed. I was going to distribute the funds. Had I won randomly, I would have distributed it to these 3 gentlemen to then work with, as I didn't really need it. So it wasn't a bribe, just a clever way to twist it.
What basically we're saying is we have a democratic process for electing block producers. And by creating a proxy, token holders who think it should be democratic can delegate to this process. And now you've got one vote, one real person for selecting your votes. And it's a really easy default to say, do that. And then we can go to companies like Block One and others and say, hey, delegate your vote to this proxy, and it will represent the will of the Eden community from a democratic thing. The one thing I would add to it is you can weight the votes by your representative level. So all Eden members can get 1 vote. If you're level, if you go through the first round, then you actually get, 4 times the weight. If you go to the next weight, you get 4 times that, and so forth. And so collectively, the representatives have a little bit more weight to represent the opinions in the voting process. There's other ways that you can combine it so that you don't get political parties forming around control of this Eden proxy, right? Because that's the danger. Is this proxy? It's democratic. All right, now there's a choice between block producer A and B. Is it red or blue? And then kind of divides the community in half. But throwing in some of these other mechanisms for sortition and the like in the weighting process of that block producer, now the Eden community is using token holders to guide block producer selection in a way that is still robust against the two-party dilemma. And we can use approval voting, other things. All this stuff can be encoded in a smart contract. So you said you didn't need any funding, but I think there is enough benefit from automating this process that funding to build the tools necessary to automate the proxy in a smart contract with the user interface is a worthwhile thing to invest in the future as this goes.
That's a great idea. Excellent idea. And that'll give me a pitch for next time then. So I can now work for the funding to automate. I'll do it manually for the next while, but that you've just created my next pitch. Thank you.
Yes. So, obviously we've had 4 great leaders selected by the community. Each of them, I guess you guys qualified and worthy of the budget that you would have been awarded. And I believe each of you would demonstrate the trust and quality that we would expect from a random sampling of a selection of the best out of 64. And it makes me very, very optimistic for the future of Eden. So I would like to challenge each of you, if you haven't already, to invite 5 people to Eden. I know some of you have probably already done that in spades, but the more people we can get in, and everyone who's watching, the more impactful, the more influence Eden will have in the world, the more influence it'll have over the opinion of the block producers, the more legitimacy it'll have in the outside world. 64 people participating in video, that's a lot of time, energy, legitimacy. It's still a self-selected group. But thank you all so much for taking the time to join the call today and for participating in the mock election. And I hope that the next election that we're aiming for is going to be an actual Eden election happening on the blockchain. So I'm hoping that the development team is able to deliver by the end of summer to have all the tools in place. And I've seen really good progress out of the Clarion team. They're working very hard to automate and smooth over a lot of the challenges we had in these mock elections, where so much happens manually and can introduce errors and things like that. One question I have for you all, how much difference do you think having additional time for a discussion would make in how the process unfolds?
Yeah, my view, so far it's been okay. I haven't come across too much need for more time personally, but that's 4 people. I think there might be an opportunity, depending on how, if it's 5 or 6 people, maybe the first round doesn't require as much time because you have a higher probability of people who aren't trying to compete. But once you get past that first round, there might be a consideration to add a little more time, just because everyone is going to be trying to present their ideas. So yeah, first round I think was great, but more people, rounds onward, it might be tougher. What do you guys think?
Well, with the current format, I think a lot of the legwork has to happen before and after the election in terms of raising awareness of projects and campaigning on them. You really don't have time. Like I mentioned previously that I had prepared pitch decks, but I really didn't use the pitch decks for the most part because it's a conversation format. It's limited time. As some people experience, if you don't focus on solving for consensus in that time limit, you might get ripped out of the room or you may not come to consensus. And so you really need to already be aware of things before you get in a room with somebody, because you don't really have, especially with a number of people in the room, you don't have time to really properly pitch something. You almost have to show up with a list of things that people are already aware of and where you're going to put the money and how much of it and stuff. And it's really about solving for consensus more than anything, and who really should move on to the next round. So I think more time to discuss would allow for more pitching and all of that stuff. But as it stands right now, a lot of the work, as I see it, is before and after and in between each election.
Yeah, my thoughts, I think if we had more time, that would just, if the whole process, like the entire election takes place on one day, more time will just, that would be really long for everyone who makes it all the way to towards the end. But I do think having more time would be nice if possibly it was broken up, maybe like weekly or yeah, just enough time in between rounds so that possibly you can kind of like, I like the idea of coming in with a pre-recorded pitch. So you have your time limit, it's there, and then afterwards you have open discussion. But depending on what happens in that round, that first round, your pitch might change. So to give some time to kind of take into consideration the other ideas, possibly even communicate with that room after the election process to say like, okay, well, I'm going to be going into this round. How would you like me to kind of incorporate your idea into my idea? And then I think maybe it could possibly bring a little bit more like help you be a little bit more prepared moving into further rounds if we spaced out the time in between the rounds, whether that be like a separate, like the next day or weekly.
I'm not sure if we need more time because people reach decisions or they get a sense of who they want to vote for and who they don't want to pretty quickly. It happens intuitively, I think. And we do need to prepare our pitch in advance, but I think that if we condense it and find the key elements that the triggers that make our pitch different and better and worthwhile, then I think it's good enough. I really like the idea of telling people join Eden because it's a very low commitment. Once every 6 months, you're going to need to invest 1 hour of your life and a donation of 10 EOS, or that might change in the future. I don't know. And people are busy, and people that I want to invite into Eden say, I have too many things going on, maybe later. And I tell them, no, join now. It's fun. It's interesting. We have these test trial runs, and they're not committing, but you can get a sense of what it's like. And in the future, once it's settled and it's real and it has real money, then it's going to be once every 6 months, just 1 hour of your time.
Yeah, unless you get represented, and there might be 2 hours of your time, maybe. But
Yeah.
You're compensated as you go up, and so it makes sense to continue investing your time.
The problem of success. Yeah.
Yes. I do want to give my take on some of the things you said. Having a situation where you're running for a particular project is something that makes sense in these early mock elections because the budget's relatively small. You can't do more than one thing with it. And the people running can kind of say, yeah, fund me. But as Eden grows and it's allocating bigger and bigger budgets, I do believe it's going to be more of a, hey, here's my proposed budget. I'm going to fund these projects, gray mass here and proxy over here and social network over here. And this is sort of where I'm going. Because if you say, I'm going to allocate it all to my thing, I don't think that's going to be a winning strategy. And so the real goal of the conversation is not going to be to pitch something new to people who've never heard it, but to pitch funding something that everyone in the room is already aware of, because there's companies out there, whether it's Clarion building a social network or Graymass building a wallet or whatever other infrastructure projects are out there, they will be advertising and marketing and saying, hey, fund me, and people will be aware of them. And there'll be like long running projects that every single time we have an election, the social network gets funding, and this marketing team gets funding, and the core devs get funding, and maybe the ratios of the funding change. But what you're really doing is picking the people we trust to allocate that budget over time, and it's filtering for trust, which I agree is intuitive. You start having a conversation with people, you look at their records, you see what they've been doing, and you see which person in the room is listening the best, able to integrate and articulate and empathize with everyone's position, and then so it might not need more time. So I think that there is the first round. It seems like Pareto principle kicks in again, and a lot of people just want to have a little bit of say in the first round, and they don't want to advance because they only want to contribute the 1 hour. So I think that there's a lot to be said for the first round being slightly shorter, and then the higher level rounds might benefit from a little bit of extra time, and maybe a little bit more spacing between it, maybe spread it out over several days. And one of the things that I'm including is the group size of 4 or 5 seems to be about ideal, and we'll have more layers, which allows us to spread it out over more time. But we never get in a situation where we have 10 people in a room that all need to pitch something and it just goes on forever. So that's my takeaway from all the feedback that you guys have provided. Does that seem to resonate with you?
Yeah, I also want to mention that if it was spread out over some days, as far as the election being kind of like a spectacle and our main way to kind of attract people, and maybe these elections will eventually be like a spectator sport to some degree, spreading them out would, similar to like regular playoffs and stuff, it would probably allow for more media coverage and accounting of what's going on and all of that.
Yeah, like doing 1 round per day. So you get the 1 round. All right, now I know I'm a representative. Now you get assigned to your group for the next round. You have all kinds of time to coordinate ahead of time, and then you have your 1 hour to like really drive it home and appear in person so that you can't civil attack it. That's one of the things that prevents us from trying to like spread it out over a longer period of time, is it allows someone to try to be like 2 places at one time, and then but by having everyone show up and participate at the same time, there's no civil attacks. Now, that only needs to be true for the very first round of the process, because everyone shows up for that 1 hour. No one can be in 2 places at one time, and therefore any representative selected from that is not a civil attack. And then we can advance from there. Now, granted, we shouldn't have civil attack because the onboarding process and all the other checks and balances we're putting in there should be eliminating this before we even get there. But it's just that the added ritual of having to do this every 6 months, unless the community votes to have it more often for some emergent consideration, then I think that is going to have a huge impact in how these things. And making it a spectator sport, people want to see who's going to win. Maybe people would have like prediction markets on who's going to win this thing. If that does not result in corruption and vote buying, since you can't stop it, I guess you can stop it subjectively, right? Any Eden member found participating in something that's counterproductive is no longer an Eden member going forward. But yeah, I think this has been huge, and I want to thank you all. If there's any questions you all have for me, I guess that we can end on with questions for me.
I've got one for you, Dan, about the process. A lot of discussion has come up, and questions are, if we receive funding, what are we going to use it for? So there's a bit of a chicken and egg dilemma, it seems, where we want to go to the block producers and say, can you give us some RAM fees, or give us a percent of inflation, some sub percent of inflation. But then it's, what are we going to use it for? We really don't have an answer to that question. I'm curious what your thoughts are in having an Eden process with just Eden members. So it doesn't have to be official. It can be just like we ran it already, unofficially, but do an Eden process with Eden members with the assumption that at the end there was substantial funding, 2.5 million EOS or something, and see if we can. I feel like we need to find a way to bring the projects forward that need funding to then take that as a pitch to the block producers?
You're right. It is a chicken and the egg. The block producers don't want to fund it if they don't know what the community is going to do. But I say that the thing that they're funding is the process itself, not the outcome. Do you believe that this process will work, that the people elected will do something that represents the consensus of all the people involved, and that will be good for EOS? If you try to say, well, we have to wait to see who wins the election before we decide to fund it, that's saying you don't believe in the process, right? And that, you know, they still want to fund things, and the process is just being used to legitimize what they already want to do. And if it doesn't do what they already want to do, then no, we're not going to fund it. Well, if that's the case, then just let the block producers directly fund the thing they actually want to have happen. But then there's like, well, we see how the incentives are not necessarily aligned to actually represent the Eden community or the EOS community, and so forth. So I think the pitch to the block producers is you're not funding an outcome, you're funding a process, and trusting the process to produce an outcome. The other thing that I wanted to throw out there is that there has been some concern over how much money is going to be allocated to Eden all at once. And what we're looking at doing is any money given to Eden is kind of put in a fund, and it's like a spendthrift thing. So we're only going to be allocating 5% of the fund per year. So any funding that does come in is not going to be spent all in this election. It's going to be spread out over time, so that the Eden community has continuity and predictability of the budget, right? Inflows of funds, whether Block 1 chooses to donate or block producers turn on funding or turn off funding, never leave the Eden community without any funding, because it's rationed over time. And so there's a little bit more predictability there. So the block producers can say, well, maybe we don't like who's elected this time. That's no big deal. They're only going to be in power for 6 months. They're only going to have this small percentage of the budget or a small percentage of the funds that have been allocated to Eden, they're going to have control over, and so forth. But then it's about consistency of funding, which I think this process sets up. So what are you guys' thoughts on that general structure?
Yeah, there's a lot of, I like the idea of, from the block producer's point of view, to know that there's some security of funds, even if a bad actor or an unideal spend potentially gets through, that the consensus answered, but still isn't ideal from their perspective. They have some comfort in that, I guess. So does that, because I also wonder, the number 0.25% inflation has been sort of the go-to point. But that was also sort of pitched with the idea that we have more members. And I'm wondering, I think slow growth is potentially a good thing. Like we're getting the right people into Eden for the right reasons. Yeah. Is there an idea of maybe asking for less inflation to start, like 0.01% or something, and just ease into it?
It's quality over quantity. More people does not necessarily mean more intelligence. It doesn't necessarily mean more quality. It's just, if you have a process and it's transparent and it has a wide sampling of representative from different people, and then other people who are choosing not to participate are basically yielding to the people who are in. If they don't like what Eden's doing, they can join and have a say in the outcome. I don't think that there's a reason to reduce the budget proportional to the number of members necessarily. I think that it's also a chicken and the egg thing. If there's a big budget, more people will sign up to participate over allocating it. And because there's not a big budget yet, not as many people want to participate. All right, so it's chicken and the egg. And so once again, it comes down to asking the block producers, believe in the process, test the process. And it's like trying to jumpstart a car. If you don't get enough initial current, the engine's not going to turn over. And so you have to, take a little bit of risk and saying, you know what, we're just going to allocate this amount of money same thing Steemit does, is we're going to allocate this amount of inflation no matter what. And if no one's writing articles, then people writing garbage articles are going to get paid a ton. If lots of people are competing, the market will establish the proper price for the articles. The block producers say, you know what, no matter what, we're going to spend this much money, like say 2% of inflation, to enhance the EOS-IO protocol and the EOS network and EOS adoption. And we're going to give it to this group of people who are going to spend it, and they have this whole consensus process that provides checks and balances and ensures that there's no incumbent advantage or secret power structure, and that it is representative of as large amount of people as possible. And the money will be there, and more people will join up to the level that the money incentivizes people to join, and it creates the incentive to participate. So I think the power that the block producers have is to say, let's go and make this thing happen, fund it with the inflation, let it run for a year. You get through a couple elections, and they can turn off the inflation, and Eden can keep going because it didn't spend all the money from that initial funding in those 2 elections. So it can keep going for potentially years with the budget slowly decreasing until the block producers turn up the funding again. And so let's give it a kickstart, give it a lot of funding, regardless of the number of people involved, because you know that the number of people involved will grow proportional to the funding available, right? You start throwing out money, all of a sudden a crowd shows up. And I think the same thing will happen with Eden, is commitment of funds yields that. So right now we've got 150 plus people officially signed up for Eden, and that's without any promise of any particular funding from block producers. This is just people that are interested in the process. That's a sizable number of people, right? That's a graduating class of some high schools, right? It's a lot of people. And then as that grows, we'll quickly get to thousands of people once real money and millions of dollars are being allocated, and they're not mock, and the tools are there to make it easy to adopt. So that's why I think this is
one follow-up on that.
Believe in the process is just what we're asking them to do. Don't wait for the outcome and then decide whether or not you want to fund it.
One follow-up, and I'll give the other people a chance. Just, we speak about the people and the 150 members we have. Is there anything, Dan, that you would like to see us do more of, less of? Anything that the community, there's so many eager members who really want to do something, contribute. And we're trying this, like the 4 of us have now decided to put up a bit of a framework and try to create some sort of structure, and it can be adopted by future electees or not. But we feel like there's this groundswell of people who really want to dig in and try to help, and they're not sure how. So we're trying to fill that void, but I'm really curious what you think about that.
Yeah, it's a typical rush of people want to do things, and you have to get organized. And we're in the process of getting organized so that we can increase the throughput and the coordination of people. So everyone who's participating in this market election, if you had any representative level, should be helping organize, and we can bestow, I guess, a certain recognition and respect and delegated authority to these people, whether it's controlling a proxy or whatnot. We can start to allocate these other responsibilities as a result of being an Eden member, and then you get additional influence, right? Additional media opportunities to express your opinions and so forth. If we can get enough intangible, non-financial benefits for being in the Eden community, we can create more roles for people, and so it's really about connecting the people who want to do something with the people who need help, and that's getting a channel on Telegram or on the forums, and people, if they actually want to help, it's a tough problem. I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily the operations expert at coordinating large groups of people to do that, but I do think that just showing up to these mock elections and helping people to show up and holding people accountable for showing up would be huge, so that we can get better turnout, right? If you're not going to show up in an election, don't RSVP and say you are, right? Those are the types of things that people say, I'm going to show up, and they don't show up. I had a conspiracy theory that a bunch of people from Ethereum said that they were going to show up and then not show up just to make things look bad. But the reality is we had 64 people show up and great things happened. So.
Cool. Anything else, fellas, that you'd like to ask Dan?
I want to go back to what you were just talking about right before that. I believe in March you published kind of an original roadmap that did involve when to approach the BPs, and it kind of hinged on the first official election. And I'm wondering, I think Chris with his proxy initiative is going to develop like an Eden Liaison kind of thing, a relationship with the BPs to know, where things are at, what they want to see happening in the ecosystem, what they maybe are already doing that people aren't aware of, and sort of going in with the assumption that the BPs want to support what's going on here, and hopefully paint them in a very good light, and at the very least collect data so that the members can make their own decisions about the BPs for the purpose of the proxy. But that relationship or that rapport, that line of communication could then help Eden communicate with the BPs. But I'm wondering if it's even necessary for any members to be concerned about some of the things you've already written about, because you do already kind of have a plan for that.
Yeah, I'm working with a lot of people behind the scenes of different ideas of how to coordinate the block producers and facilitate communication between block producers and Eden. And so some of those things, things change rapidly in this space over the past couple of months. We've got different sources of funding. I'm still talking with Block One. They've indicated support for Eden and desire to fund it. And the main thing that's holding that back right now is getting the smart contract that we're building inside Clarion to be fully autonomous, so that the funds aren't going to Clarion, but going directly to the autonomous Eden community. So that's one of the things that's going on there. And as that unfolds, we'll see that there's a lot of different people who all want to fund Eden and to donate to its success. And there's many sources of funding, whether it's RAM fees or savings account or inflation or Block One or member donations. All these things collectively lead me to believe that there's going to be funding for Eden, even if we don't necessarily know the exact form or timing of those things. But it's also a chicken and the egg thing. People can't send the money someplace until the smart contracts are in place to manage the money and make sure that it belongs in the control of the right parties. So that's what we're working on.
That makes sense. Yeah, and we had a call. I had a call with what was recorded for everyone with Brandon Fancher yesterday, and they're making some great progress. Brandon's excellent communicator, and he really outlined the progress and the roadmap is being stuck with there. So that's good news, because that's going to come along pretty quickly, I think, this automated piece. Any other questions? Ami, Felix, you guys have anything you want to throw Dan's way?
No, just what's the title of the next book, Dan?
I've been thinking a lot about the next book. I've got several concepts for the next book, including turning the current book on its head. So instead of being about democracy down to the individual, be from the individual up to the democracy, and how it's in everyone's self-interest to join a community because they're maximizing their independence, and just kind of work that way. Because sometimes the idea of politics and election processes is not necessarily appealing, but if it's a how-to guide of increasing your power and autonomy in your life by coordinating with other people, that might be a different perspective to cover some of the same ideas. And then combining that concept with some of the work I'm doing on the bylaws for Eden. We've got this general process that I covered in More Equal Animals, but then, how do you invite members? How do you resolve disputes? What is the rationale for those bylaws? Those are the things that I'm thinking about and researching for my next book. So there will be another book.
Awesome.
Nice. Good. Expecting to read that.
And translate it to Hebrew, I hope.
And translate, yeah. The first book is in the printing press, and it's going to be ready in a week. And I got invited to lecture some group of people about Bitcoin, because that's the top of their knowledge, and I got a free pass on using that as a starting point and lecturing about whatever I want. And I want to talk about More Equal Animals, because it's very relevant. The political situation in Israel, it's not a two-party system, but it's broken. It's broken very bad. And I'm going to talk to these people in a kibbutz, which is also a social governance experiment that failed in Israel. And they're all privatized now, but people are still missing the good old days when Dunbar number was low and everybody knew everybody and were accountable, and it broke apart when they just grew, and you had prisoner's dilemma and
Moral hazard.
tragedy of the commons. So
Yep. The key concept is keeping things fractal. At each level, it needs to mirror the levels above and below, but they're small and they're composed of like kind. And without the fractal structure, then governance quickly gets corrupted because it gets too big. It's like a cell in a body getting too big, and so the surface area to volume ratio gets off and it dies, right? Or an animal gains too much weight and the structure can't support it and it collapses. So there's scale of relative scale that you have to respect in nature, or things collapse. And if you don't design your governance structure around that fractal process, you'll get big and big and then you'll collapse as corruption sets in. And so that fractal structure is a concept I'm also going to be highlighting a little bit more in my next book. I didn't quite find that word in time for More Equal Animals, but I think it's the most accurate description of. It's better than hierarchical, because it is actually fractal in its composition. As you zoom in, you see the pattern reflected on down.
And one last one, Dan, and I think this is important. A lot of people are looking to you to do things. And I'd like to offer a hand. What can we do anything for you? Is there anything that the board here that we can do to help you, the community? Like, how can we help you do what you need to do?
You guys are already helping me do things by showing up, participating in selection, producing content, getting the word out there. Most of what I'm doing right now is facilitating thoughts, advising the Clarion team, funding the people that are making all this stuff happen out of my own finances. So there's a lot of things that I'm doing, but this does not succeed without everyone buying into, hey, this process will work and I'm going to contribute my time. If you always ask what other people are going to do instead of what you're doing, then nothing's going to happen. So you sign up, you volunteer, you do what you know to do, and you just contribute. Tell your friends, produce content, get involved in every mock election. Just having your number, even if you don't want to advance, just showing up at a mock election, you're expressing support and building the momentum and making it a reality. And I think that welcoming people, right? Just making the chat rooms a pleasant place to be, introducing people to nonviolent communication, right? And really trying to improve the culture and warmth in the community, so that we're not focused on all the pessimism and all the things that divide us, but focus on celebrating the fact that we now have a tool to unite us and to reach consensus, and to break through the political shortcomings of other systems. So there's a lot of hope that people need to have. Other things that are really easy for everyone to do is to say positive things on Twitter and Facebook about EOS and the like. Usually it's all the trolls out there that have something negative to say about things. They can tend to overwhelm things, but people will say, I don't want to say anything positive or whatnot, because that's kind of, I don't know what the mentality is, but the more positive things that we can say can start to change the feeling and the narrative for all the other observers. And so being inactive, just being a little bit more active and proactive and liking things and retweeting things and sharing things and commenting in a positive, encouraging direction, it can start a snowball effect, right? Encouragement, positivity is contagious, and the community will grow and the token price will go up. So there's that, and there's holding the other members of the Eden community accountable to those things and to guard themselves against negativity. It's very easy to fall in the trap of negativity and to give up. So those are all relatively easy things that everyone can do. Just find one positive thing to say per day, and all of a sudden we've got an avalanche of positive engagement on anything and everything about Eden and EOS on the other social media channels. That's a great way to contribute, even if you don't have the ability to do a show and go on all these interviews and be a Chris Barnes. There's lots of things that you can do.
Great.
I don't know how we're doing on time, but I guess my quick question would be, so this anticipated official first election that will be, I guess we're aiming for August. Will this be, so we'll have that, and will we have a 6-month term until the next one, or how do you foresee that playing out?
Yeah, I suspect it'll actually be early September, not August. But yes, that's when we'll have the first one, and it will be for a 6-month term from there. Unless, of course, the community and all the members vote to move it up, right? So there's a process for moving the election forward. But yes, we're aiming for every 6 months, and September would be the first official election. One of the things that could be done, by the way, is the winner could say, hey, I'm going to allocate a budget for a couple more mock elections just to elect people to fund specific projects or things like that. So there's possible that there might be other, promotional practice elections in between official Eden elections every 6 months, depending on how things go. So that's what I believe the schedule is going to be. Of course, all things in technology and politics and economics are subject to change, but we're all putting in a lot of effort toward making this a reality as quickly as possible.
Perfect. I think that's probably a good point to end on. Dan, you've given us a lot of your time. This has been an hour and a half. So I really, really, really thank you for everything you're doing, Dan. Putting up the funds for this, putting in the work, the time. Again, we're here for you if there's anything that we can do for you as a board, as a community, but don't hesitate to reach out, and at a minimum we can try to work on your behalf in the capacity we have to make Eden a success. I know we're all in this for the right reasons, and we want to see this succeed in the long term. So anything we can do, we're here. And with that, I'll end this broadcast, and yeah, any closing remarks, Dan? Of course, I got to give you the chance to say goodbye.
That's it. Just thank everyone who participated, and I really do believe that as Eden advances, all your projects will probably get funding at some point. So keep it up.
Okay,
thank you,
awesome. Dan. Thanks, everybody. Go EOS.
Later, guys.
Yes.